The Sign of Four, 1890, Episode 7. Watson's Love and New Beginnings. Welcome back, detective friend. Last episode revealed the shocking truth. Captain Morstan has been alive all these years, held prisoner by Major Sholto. Now comes the most emotional chapter of our adventure. A father-daughter reunion 10 years in the making, and a love story that will change Dr. Watson's life forever. Picture the scene. It's dawn at 221B Baker Street, 3 days after the Thames rescue. Captain Morstan sits in Holmes's favorite chair, his injuries healing, but his eyes still haunted by 10 years of captivity. You're witnessing a consultation unlike any other, not about solving a crime, but about rebuilding a shattered life. Holmes paces thoughtfully before the fireplace. Captain, the legal situation is complex. Officially, you've been dead for a decade. Your military pension, your belongings, even your identity, all will need to be restored. Morstan's weathered hands tremble slightly. Mr. Holmes, I care nothing for bureaucracy. I just want to see my Mary. But how do I face her after all these lost years? How do I explain that I was alive while she mourned me? What would your advice be, detective friend? How do you prepare a father for a reunion that could either heal or devastate both hearts involved? Watson, who has been unusually quiet, suddenly speaks. Captain, Mary has spoken of you every day since this case began. She's never stopped loving you, never stopped hoping. That kind of love doesn't diminish with time. It grows stronger. There's something in Watson's voice when he speaks of Mary that makes Holmes glance at him sharply. Have you noticed it too, detective friend? The way Watson's entire demeanor changes when Mary Morstan is mentioned. A knock at the door interrupts the moment. Mrs. Hudson's voice calls up. Mr. Holmes, Miss Morstan is here, and she seems quite determined. Holmes and Watson exchange glances. They had planned to prepare Mary gradually for this revelation, but it appears she has other ideas. She's always been headstrong, Captain Morstan says with a mixture of pride and nervousness. Even as a child, once Mary made up her mind about something. What do you think has prompted Mary's unexpected visit, detective friend? Has news of the Thames rescue reached her, or is something else driving her here? Holmes makes a quick decision. Watson, bring Miss Morstan up, but prepare her gently. Captain, perhaps you'd prefer to wait in the back room until… No. Morstan's voice is firm despite his nervousness. I've hidden for 10 years. I won't hide for another moment. The footsteps on the stairs seem to echo with destiny. Then Mary Morstan appears in the doorway, and time itself seems to pause. She's dressed in a simple blue dress, her dark hair neatly arranged, but her eyes hold a mixture of hope and determination that makes her beautiful beyond mere appearance. She looks around the room, her gaze moving from Holmes to Watson to you, and finally, Papa. The single word breaks like a dam bursting. 10 years of grief, hope, and unanswered questions pour out in that one syllable. Captain Morstan rises from his chair, tears streaming down his face. My darling girl, my Mary. What follows, detective friend, is a reunion that would melt the hardest heart. Father and daughter embrace as if trying to compress 10 years of separation into a single moment. Both are crying openly, words tumbling over each other in a desperate attempt to bridge the lost years. I thought you were dead, Mary sobs against her father's shoulder. I mourned you every day. I kept your photograph by my bed and told you about my life each night before sleep. I know, my dear one, I know. There were times I wanted to give up, but the thought of you kept me alive. Every year I managed to send you those pearls. It was the only way I could show you that somewhere, somehow, I was still fighting to return to you. Holmes watches this emotional scene with unusual softness in his usually sharp features. Even his analytical mind can appreciate the profound human drama unfolding before him. But you notice something else, detective friend. What about Watson's reaction to this reunion? Dr. Watson stands slightly apart, watching Mary with an expression that reveals everything. This is a man deeply, hopelessly in love. The way he looks at her, the gentle smile that crosses his face as he witnesses her joy. It's unmistakable. After the initial flood of emotion subsides, Practical questions emerge. Mary pulls back from her father's embrace, studying his face with eyes that catalogued every change the years have wrought. "Papa, Mr. Holmes explained some of what happened, but I need to understand everything. Major Sholto, he kept you prisoner all these years?" Captain Morstan's face hardens. Bartholomew's father was consumed by guilt and greed in equal measure. He couldn't bring himself to kill me outright, but he couldn't bear to let me live freely either. So he chose a middle path, a living death that satisfied neither his conscience nor his avarice. "And the treasure?" Mary asks quietly. This is the crucial moment, detective friend. How will Mary react to learning she's now one of the wealthiest women in England? Holmes steps forward with a small leather pouch. The recovered portion of the Agra treasure has been valued at approximately $500,000. As Captain Morstan's sole heir, and the daughter of one of the original 4 who earned this treasure, it legally belongs to you, Miss Morstan. Mary stares at the pouch as if it were a poisonous snake. Blood money, every coin paid for with suffering. "No, my dear," her father says gently. "This treasure was earned through legitimate service to the crown. What happened afterward, Sholto's betrayal, my imprisonment, the deaths that followed, those were not the fault of the treasure itself, but of men who let greed corrupt their honor." Watson suddenly steps forward, his medical bag in hand. "Captain, you should rest. The emotional strain of this reunion, combined with your physical injuries." But Mary turns to Watson with a look that stops him mid-sentence. "Dr. Watson, I owe you an enormous debt. Mr. Holmes told me how you've worked tirelessly on this case, how you've spoken of me with such kindness." There's a moment of electric silence. What do you observe in this exchange, detective friend? What unspoken communication passes between Mary and Watson? Watson's cheeks color slightly. "Miss Morstan, that is, your welfare has been my primary concern throughout this investigation." "Has it?" Mary asks softly, stepping closer to him. "Your primary concern? Or something more?" Holmes clears his throat diplomatically. "Perhaps we should discuss the legal ramifications of—" "Sherlock," Watson says quietly, never taking his eyes off Mary. "For once in your life, please stop talking." The room falls completely silent except for the ticking of the mantelpiece clock and the distant sounds of London awakening outside. Mary reaches out and takes Watson's hand. "John, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer." What do you think she's going to ask, detective friend? And how will Watson's response change both their lives? During this entire case, every moment we've spent together, every kindness you've shown me, was it only professional courtesy, or was there something more personal driving your actions? Watson's voice is barely above a whisper. "Mary, if I'm being completely honest, I fell in love with you the moment you walked into this sitting room 6 days ago. Every moment since then has been torment, knowing that I'm a simple army doctor with little to offer a woman of your grace and intelligence." Mary's response is to rise on her tiptoes and kiss him gently on the lips. "You foolish, wonderful man," she whispers against his mouth. "Don't you realize that your kindness, your loyalty, your gentle strength are worth more than all the treasures in India?" Captain Morstan watches this romantic tableau with obvious approval. "Dr. Watson, I've observed you for 3 days now. Any man who would risk his life to save a stranger, who would show such devotion to finding the truth, who could earn my daughter's love, that man has my blessing." Holmes, meanwhile, has tactfully moved to the window, ostensibly checking the street, but actually giving the couple privacy for their moment. What are your thoughts on this development, detective friend? Does Watson deserve this happiness after all his loyal service to others? "Mary," Watson says, his voice stronger now. "There's something else you need to know. The treasure makes you independently wealthy. You could marry anyone, a lord, a wealthy merchant, anyone at all. Are you certain you want to tie yourself to a retired army surgeon who shares lodgings with a consulting detective?" Mary's laugh is like silver bells. "John Watson, are you trying to talk me out of loving you? Because if so, you're doing a terrible job of it." "I'm trying to be practical," Watson protests weakly. "Well, stop it immediately," Mary commands with mock severity. I've had quite enough practicality in my life. What I need now is adventure, companionship, and love. Can you offer me those?" "For the rest of my life," Watson promises solemnly. Holmes turns from the window, his face showing rare genuine pleasure. "Watson, it appears congratulations are in order. Miss Morstan, or should I say, the future Mrs. Watson, you have excellent taste in husbands." But there's something bittersweet in Holmes's expression, detective friend. What do you think he's feeling as he watches his closest friend prepare to begin a new chapter of life? Captain Morstan raises a practical question. "Mary, darling, what do you plan to do about the treasure? £500,000 is a tremendous responsibility." Mary looks thoughtfully around the room, at her father, recovering from 10 years of imprisonment, at Watson, the man who helped rescue both her father and her heart, at Holmes, whose brilliant mind solved an impossible case, and at you, the fellow detective who shared this incredible journey. "I've been thinking about that," she says. "Papa, you'll need time to recover, to readjust to the world. I want to establish a fund to help other colonial veterans who've fallen through the cracks of society. And I want to endow a scholarship for promising young doctors in honor of the man I'm going to marry." Watson looks overwhelmed by her generosity. "Mary, you don't need to." "I need to do something meaningful with this treasure, John. It's tainted with too much suffering to be spent on personal luxuries. But good can come from it, if we're wise." Holmes nods approvingly. A noble sentiment. "And what of Jonathan Small and Tonga? Their trial begins next week." The mood in the room grows more somber. The question of justice for the two men who killed Bartholomew Sholto while trying to rescue Captain Morstan remains complex and troubling. What's your opinion, detective friend? What would be fair justice for men who committed a crime while attempting a rescue? Mary speaks first. "I want to testify on their behalf. Tonga's action was accidental, and both men were trying to free my father from unlawful imprisonment. Surely that must count for something in their favor." Captain Morstan agrees. "Small saved my life more than once during our years in the Andaman Islands, and again during my captivity. I owe him a debt that can never be fully repaid." Holmes considers this carefully. "With testimony from both of you, plus the evidence of the illegal imprisonment, I believe we can argue for transportation rather than hanging. Small's knowledge of India could be valuable to the Colonial Office, and Tonga, perhaps a new start in a different colony, with proper papers and legal status." As the morning light grows stronger through the windows of 2I21B Baker Street, you realize that this case has taught you something profound about the nature of justice, love, and redemption. Watson and Mary sit together now, planning their future with the quiet joy of two people who have found their perfect match. Captain Morstan watches them with the contentment of a father who has lived to see his daughter's happiness. And Holmes? He returns to his chemical experiments, but with a slight smile that suggests even the most logical mind can appreciate the beautiful complexity of human emotions. "Detective friend," Holmes says, turning to you as the others continue their conversations. "We've solved the mystery of the sign of 4, but we've discovered something far more valuable in the process. What do you think Holmes means, detective friend? What treasure has been found that's worth more than all the wealth of Agra?" "We've learned that the greatest mysteries aren't about hidden treasures or ancient crimes," Holmes continues, "but about the bonds that connect us to one another. Love, loyalty, sacrifice, redemption. These are the forces that truly drive human behavior." As you prepare to leave Baker Street, you reflect on the incredible journey you've shared. A simple case about mysterious pearls became an adventure involving murder, imprisonment, exotic poisons, high-speed chases, and ultimately, the triumph of love over adversity. Mary Morstan came to Holmes seeking answers about her father's disappearance and found not only her father alive, but also the love of her life. Watson, who began this case as a loyal friend supporting Holmes, discovered that his own heart was capable of the deepest love. Captain Morstan, who had given up hope of ever seeing his daughter again, has been restored to life and the promise of future grandchildren. Even Jonathan Small and Tonga, whose actions led to tragedy, may find a path to redemption through the mercy of those they tried to help. And you, detective friend? What have you learned from your time investigating alongside the world's first consulting detective? Perhaps you've discovered that the most important cases aren't always the most complex ones, and that sometimes the greatest detective work involves not just solving crimes, but healing hearts and restoring hope to the hopeless. As you step out into the bustling streets of Victorian London, you carry with you the satisfaction of having helped solve one of Holmes's most emotionally complex cases, and the knowledge that love, in the end, is the greatest treasure of all. The adventure of the Sign of Four is complete, but for Holmes, Watson, and Mary, new adventures and new mysteries await just around the corner.